So, entheogens and the Bible. Are there any entheogens in the Bible? Are there any drugs in the Bible? Yes, there are loads of drugs in the Bible. What are they used for? They are used to introduce people to the spirit of Yahweh. They are used for prophecy and divination. And we talked about that in terms of the shamanic way of doing things. Now, normally, the visions come to people when they're alone in the Bible. And there's only one bit of the Bible where everybody sees a vision together. And it's in the wilderness, and it's at the time when they're all eating manna. And that's rather curious. In fact, it's not only rare in biblical literature, it's rare in world mythology. There's almost no examples of collective vision happening. And all the people are seeing the voices and the flames and the sound of the trumpet. This is describing what they saw in Mount Sinai. Now, we don't normally see voices and we don't normally see the sound of the trumpet unless we're on acid, because it can occasion synesthesia, which is the mixing of senses. And the most common synesthetic experience is seeing sounds, quite often shapes around the bass speaker, perhaps. So that's quite extraordinary. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's going on in the brain when that happens. I had the fortune to be a subject in the psilocybin experiment, and I sat in a kind of big perm machine thing with electrodes all over my head and a tennis ball against my chin to keep my brain still, and I was to look at pictures of chaos and say whether I could see something, whether it was an object, an animate object or an inanimate object. And while this was going on, they were monitoring my anterior cingulate cortex. Now, what that does is it's the bit of the brain which decides how to interpret something, and it's the bit of the brain which is affected most by psilocybin. So, for example, if I was to show you this and ask you what word written there was, of course the answer is red. The colour isn't red, the colour is orange. So a bit of your brain is going to say it's red, another bit of your brain is going to say it's orange, and then the anterior cingulate cortex is going to light up as you decide which one it is. And when the ACT isn't functioning, if you inhibit it, then you make those decisions very much slower. And in fact, if you take big enough doses of your psychedelics, then you can hold on to two completely contradictory ideas at the same time. And good merges into evil, and I merge into you, and all these wonderful things happen. And that's what's going on with the anterior cingulate cortex, affected by many psychoactives. And this happens in the wilderness, like I say, when people were taking manna. And we tend to think about manna as dropping out of the sky like food aid, but it wasn't. It was a secretion. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, "Manhu," for they wist not what it was. Manhu is the Hebrew there. In the King James Version, it's translated as "it is manna," which doesn't really make sense. Imagine there was a fruit which you've never seen before, and you picked it up and said, "It's orange." Well, then you might say he called it an orange because he wist not what it was. But if he did know what it was, then it wouldn't make any sense. So why would they say it's manna if they didn't know what manna was? Most of the other Bibles translate it as "what is it?" And this comes from an old argument, to an old debate between the sages, and they were talking about why is it manhu rather than mahu? Because manhu is the Egyptian word, or man is the Egyptian word for what? The Hebrew word is ma, not man. And so some of the sages say, well, the Israelites were in Egypt so long they started picking up Egyptian words, but other sages will say, well, everything else that they said was in Hebrew, why are they speaking Egyptian at this point? And also there's something else, this bit here, wist not, is also mahu. So the verse says both mahu and manhu, so there's a little bit of a poetic play going on there. Another way we can translate it is man, right? Man is a substance, it's something which the Bedouin collect. They collect it from tamarisk trees, and basically aphids produce this sugary dew out of their bottoms, and the ants go and collect it. And the Bedouin would collect this stuff. It forms pellets, and they become hard, and they can eat it, and that's what it looks like. So Bedouin man, and it's quite a good guess, not a bad guess. I'll tell you why. Manna is described as coriander seed, and the appearance thereof as the appearance of bdellium. So a coriander seed, the size of a coriander seed, which the pellets of man often are. This thing is actually says the eye of bdellium. So in some way it looks like bdellium. It's not clear exactly how. This is what bdellium looks like. It's a kind of resin. Like coriander seed, white, and tasted like wafers made with honey. And this stuff does taste like wafers made with taste like honey. A fine flake-like thing, fine as hoarfrost on the ground. So the secretion can collect into pellets on the leaf, or it can drop onto the ground. And that's where they found it, on the ground. And there's a bit of a problem with this. Hoarfrost is this. It's when the dew in the morning freezes, you get this very fine, flaky stuff, and it crunches when you step on it. And Bedouin man doesn't do that. When it drops off the tree, it makes a kind of globular mound. So that doesn't really fit there. So there's certain bits where it does fit. It is a whitish, resinous, that's about the size of coriander seeds. It tastes like wafers and honey. But this thing about the flakes on the ground doesn't seem to match up. And there's another bit as well. And the people went about and gathered it and ground it in their mills and beat it into a mortar and baked it in pans and made cakes of it. Now you can't grind it either. And you can't beat it. Well, you could, but they weren't doing it because it doesn't grind up. Because it's viscous. It's not a brittle thing. And the other thing is, and Moses said, let no man leave of it till the morning. Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses, but some of them left of it until the morning, and it bred worms and stank, and Moses was wroth with them. So, Bedouin man doesn't stink in the morning. You can keep it for a year. And the other thing is, it's not very miraculous. You know, the Bedouin have been collecting it for ages. Why is this described as such a miracle? One more thing. Between the evenings ye shall eat meat, and in the morning ye are satisfied with bread, manna. And ye have known that I am Yahweh your God. Now look, satisfied, this idea of satisfaction goes with bread, it goes with the manna. It doesn't go with the meat. And also, the meat is not described as miraculous. The manna is described as miraculous. Now this meat is quail meat, and there were flocks of quails which very obligingly dropped out of the sky so the Israelites could eat them, which seems like rather more miraculous provenance than something dripping off the secretion. So what could it be? Well, it's about 2,500 years since this was written down, and the legend goes back probably another 1,000 years. So it's got to be speculation at this point. I'm going to speculate that it is ergot, because ergot does very rapidly. Well, ergot begins with a taste like honey, and it forms white, resinous pellets about the size of coriander, and when it hits the ground, it does kind of spread out. It's brittle. It's not, and it makes something that looks a bit like a hoarfrost, and you can grind it, and you can beat it. The other thing which is similar to ergot is that it stinks the next day, or it very, very rapidly, as the infection progresses, it becomes toxic and dangerous. The other thing is that in the Bible it appears at springtime, which is when the ergot comes out of its dormancy, and this seeing voices and seeing the sound of the trumpet is, well, ergot is what was used to make LSD, and LSD does that kind of thing. And something else which is rather interesting, remember it said that this stuff was to be boiled. Now, why would a very powerful deity give a food which had to be prepared? Surely it could be within his means to give something that was prepared and ready to go, but they had to boil it. And boiling ergot is a way that you can separate the toxic alkaloids from the psychoactive, well, the psychoactive alkaloids from the toxic bit. So, Albert Hoffman, may he rest in peace, he made his acid out of ergot. And when asked about this, he said, could this have been done in the past? And he said, this was well within the range of possibilities open to early man. This is the last thing I'm going to say, and this is a little bit complicated, and it's to do with the words in the wilderness. So the Bible, as I said right at the beginning, this idea of bringing it together and taking it apart, is in itself an extremely psychedelic text. With extraordinary bits in it, and this is part of poetry here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about. There are three wildernesses. The first one is called Midbar Shur, and Shur means walls. The second is called Midbar Sin, and Sin means clay, and it means thorn. Right? Now think about those things. A thorn is that which penetrates from one zone into another zone and allows the contents of one to flow through into the other. Clay also is what walls are made of, but when the walls go back into their fluid state, that's clay. So perhaps we're talking about this alchemical idea of things coming together and breaking apart. In fact, the whole idea of leaving behind bondage and going to the wilderness where there's no walls and there's no rules, and then going towards the promised land, with just this idea that there's something there, and not knowing very far, not knowing which way you have to go next, but knowing what the next step is, that sounds like a very strong acid trip to me. The third wilderness is called Midbar Sinai, based on the same word, sin. And also, this word for the burning bush, which Moses sees, seneh, it's the same letters again, these two, samek and nun, with a hey on the end. The hey is the feminine ending. And in Midbar Sinai, it puts these two yods in. The yod is the letter of masculine power. So you have this word here, this sin, with letters added to it, but it's the same word. Seneh means acacia, and acacia has the most amount of DMT of any plant in the area. It also has NMT in it and a whole load of other stuff in it. And everything in the tabernacle was made out of acacia, all that wood and stuff. There's no direct evidence that acacia was used in the tabernacle, but extracting DMT from acacia is not very difficult. And throwing that onto the fire as well would be extremely psychoactive, but that hasn't been revealed. Now, the burning bush, which Moses sees, seneh, when he sees it, it's described as having flames around it which burn, which you can see, but they don't burn the plant, which is quite a good description of the crazy geometric patterns that you see around things on the psychedelic state. That is the end of my talk. I'm just going to wrap up by saying that book has got all that stuff about drugs in the Bible and a whole lot more interesting stuff. This one is a completely different book, Science Revealed. It's the first of the trilogy, and that looks at revelation in science, people who discover things in dreams and on psychoactives and flashes of inspiration, and looks at a whole load of other stuff as well. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, yes?
How does the church feel about your theories?
Well, I'm actually trying to provoke fights with evangelical Christians, because I think it would be good publicity for me. So the church, I mean, some of them are cool. I've run it by one Anglican priest, and he said, I thought this was settled years ago. It's very clear that they were using drugs. And I ran it by a Jewish rabbi, in fact, a teacher of rabbis at Rabbinical College, and he said it was pretty convincing as well, although he complained about something like Hebrew. I've corrected those bits.
I can hook you up with a street preacher who's been asking me to find him someone to debate for.
What's he like?
I don't know, not all that bright, but
yeah, great.